Hi, here's a video trying to explain how to use the web2py and data tables integration that I've written. Just a disclaimer, I've only been using web technologies for a few months, so the code that I've written can definitely be improved. And if you want to improve it and send it back, that'd be fantastic. This is so on GitHub there is a web2py application which I think you should just be able to download here and dump in, and it should magically work. But I don't know enough about web2py to know whether that's all you need to do. I'll try to outline in another video exactly what files you need, or what files you need, and I provide to do what you're about to see. The use of this is all manipulated through really one file, which is called the common datatable.py file. You can call it whatever you like. I've got it sitting in the models folder, which is in here. And I put it there because I've had troubles when it's in the modules folder. It doesn't always read the changes that I've made, and it's caused me grief in the past. That's just my fault. I'm not doing something right. But if you put in the models folder, then you don't have any problems with it using older compiled versions or whatever. At the top of this file, there are a list of the settings. I think all of them. I should check that actually. Most of the settings with spelling mistakes in alphabetical order to make it a bit easier to find. And then for any particular table that you want to use, you don't need to, but you can add in an entry for that table, not specifically the table, actually a data table name, which may or may not be the same as the table. And then you can configure things in here as to links and how it should display. What I've done is made up some examples which we can look at now. Where are they? Oh, there they are. Okay, example 1. So you can look at these examples. I won't jump back to this, but you can see example 1. All we've got is the name, and we need to specify the table name because example 1 is not a table. If example 1 was a table, then we wouldn't need to specify the table name. A page heading and the info. So the only thing that we need actually here is just the table name, and if what we're passing in here is the table name, we don't even need that. So let's go back to web2py. First of all, this is the controller and function data table and show, and if you go to just show with no arguments after it, it will show your database model with the tables that are in your model, and then you can just click on the table and it will show you, take you to that particular table's data. So this is all that's happening kind of automatically. You don't need to have anything in that file. It will just use a whole pile of defaults. But that might be enough for many applications. So you don't actually need to do anything in the file I was just looking at. But invariably you'll find that you want to add stuff or manipulate things. And so here are some examples of what you can do. Come back to the icon. I have an icon specified in the table definition, so you can specify custom properties in the table definition, and it will look for an icon there, or you can actually specify it in that file that I was just describing. This is just all the defaults applied, including the common filter, although there's no common filters in this demo data. But by default it applies a common filter. And you can see every column is ordered and every column has a search field. We've got an edit button, we've got a control button which shows all the extra columns that couldn't fit in to this one. Your buttons up the top are here, these buttons are here, all that comes by default, and you don't have to make any changes. Okay, example 2. This shows how you can rearrange the fields. So there is a fields property, and actually when I say a property, there is a giant dictionary called dt_settings, data table settings, and one of the sub-dictionaries, if you will, is the fields dictionary, and in that you simply specify the fields as a list. And so I want total points, gold, silver, bronze, and so it puts these fields first, points, gold, silver, bronze. And because we haven't got any other settings telling it to do anything different, it will simply include all the other fields after that. So I found that often I actually wanted all the fields of the table. I just wanted to rearrange them a little bit. And so you can rearrange the first lot by simply specifying the names. And I've turned off the common filter in this one, so if you have a look at the example, you'll see how to do that. Okay, example 3, we want to show other fields in the child row. So we've got two columns, user and points, and we've just forced all of the other fields to appear in the child area. So that's handy because often you don't want to show all of these miscellaneous fields there. You just want a couple of main fields, but it's handy still to have them hanging around. The data tables child row feature is quite nice. I like it. Example 4, this is showing all fields, sets the all fields property to blank, which means that we're not going to show all the fields. We're going to hide the fields that we don't explicitly mention. And here we've explicitly referenced user ID, total points, and ID. So, so you can see there's no drop down. Although the drop down will appear, you need to turn the control fields off. So here we've got a control fields property, and we're specifying that we want the edit control field, which is this one here. And there's another one called control, I think, by default. And if you remove it from the list, then it just disappears. And then the last thing here is we're showing references. The references, which we might look at in another example, are the automatically created links based on the references from one table to another table. And if we don't turn that off, then it will still show the child row. So there's a few things. It's a little bit messy, actually. It probably should be done better than that. But if you don't want to show that child row and get rid of the drop down, then control fields, turn the edit off, and don't show references. And make certain that you don't show the all fields, because what will happen is it will automatically push them into the child field section. Okay, let's have a look at example 5. Okay, so this enables ordering on specific fields. So you can see user points and one other. It's actually total gold, but it hasn't fitted onto this screen. They're the only ones that you can order on. These ones you can't. So you can specify which ones you want to order on. Actually, if we look down here, these are the links I was referring to. So this is organization user table. There's user items that are attached to it. So if I find myself here, maybe this one, and we can click on that user item, and it'll take us off and show you if we've got some. Okay, let's have a look at the next example, example 6. All these examples are in that GitHub demo. This enables searching on specific fields. So here we've got rid of all the search boxes except for this one and a few others. Unfortunately, there's no way to search on those other ones if they don't appear. So that is a limitation of data tables. So you need to keep that in mind when you're building your grids. So even though we should be able to search on whatever it was, teacher or something. Was it teacher? Oh, yeah, okay. So that shouldn't be teacher, that's a mistake there. So total silver is correct, but because it's down in the child area, there's no search functionality once it gets pushed into this area. Teacher is not the correct name. It should be teacher user ID, I think. So, so what the column headings that you're seeing here are the representative or the represents column headings. So when you define a table in web2py, you can put a label, and so this data tables integration looks to see whether there is a label and uses that label, as well as on these links down the bottom, it looks to see whether there is a plural table name for this particular table, and if there is, it uses that rather than the name itself. But this example was purely to show that you can restrict the searchable fields by entering them in the right property. Okay, number 7. Okay, this is responsive is false, and so by default the table is responsive, which means that it fits to the size of the page. Whatever columns it can't fit on, it will push them down into the child section. But as soon as you turn responsive off, you lose your child section, and you have to scroll left and right, which is not unlike the smart grid. One of the problems there is you can specify the widths of columns, but it doesn't work if the table extends past the width of your screen. It kind of just uses some sort of auto sizing. I think on the next example you'll see that it does actually apply the widths if the table doesn't spread too far over. The other catch here as well is if you click on this, hopefully it's going to show something a little bit slow there. Oh no, it doesn't. Okay, that's good. It can also treat this as the control field that drops down, but in that instance it didn't, so that was good. This is still very much a work in progress. So every day I make some little change to it to work better for me. Okay, here's where you can actually set an icon. So there's a setting just for icon, and you specify whatever icon you want there. And this this info property. So there's a subtitle. There's a subtitle that appears here. We haven't seen that yet. Actually, we did, I think, when we looked at one of the child references. So that kind of gets built automatically, and there's really no control that you have over that. It just shows a filter and the name of the filter. This is the info. This section here is the info property, so you can put something in there. And then we're looking at the icon, and you specify URL for that. And as I said before, it normally comes from the icon property attached to the table itself. Okay, number 10, number 9. Okay, this forces fields into the child section. So sometimes there's fields that you just don't ever want to appear in this list, regardless of how wide their screen is. And so here I've just said I want the organization to appear down here, and so it just pushes the organization into the child fields row. 10. Okay, this is adding links. So you can add links here as pictures, or just add them as text. So it's a little clumsy to do this. I think it probably could be improved, but basically you have to specify. There's two parts. You've got to specify the link, and you've got to specify the image. So here, userdex has only specified a link. It hasn't specified an image, so it just uses whatever the column name was that you've specified. And for this one, we've specified an image, and so it'll show the image. Don't confuse these with the links down here. These are the automatically generated links from the references in a table. So when you reference one table in web2py to another table, that's how these are built. Okay, I think there's one more. Okay. We haven't really looked at the dialogue, so we'll do that now. The dialogues are built just from they're just a standard web2py dialogue. So when you use the SQL form on a table, it generates a dialogue, it generates a form. All I've done is put that form in a pop-up window. You saw before that these tabs were numbered, which is the default. But you can specify labels for the tabs. It's a little bit primitive because you can only you can only include the fields in the order that they appear in the table. So I can't put the wallpaper field on the last tab because that's, well, I could if wallpaper and everything after it was on the last tab. But the fields are always in the same order dependent on how they've been configured in the web2py table definition. So all you do in the setup is specify the field number and the tab name. So so field 1 has a tab name this, and field whatever it is 10 has a tab name this, and field 15 has a tab name this, and it just puts the fields on the relevant tabs. You can see here this says edit personal, edit address. When you add, you can configure different tabs or different tab names. I had need of that in one instance. I think it was because you can specify a different function. So by default, the datatables integration just uses the standard SQL form, but you can tell it to use a different controller function which can generate a custom form, which in my instance merged a couple of tables together. So the edit looked different to, the edit form was different to the add form, and because of that I wanted to use different tabs to group them together. But that's not, obviously none of that is necessary. Okay, I think there's more settings that I've demonstrated there, and I've tried to list all those settings in the top of that file back here. I mentioned that right at the beginning. So right here, all settings in alphabetical order. I will check that it is all settings, and I'll try to spell alphabetical correctly, and that's probably a good place to start to see what you can do. You can see you can turn off the header, turn off the footer, not use the represent, so the labels, if you don't want to use the labels, you just want to use the table names. That shows the search or disables the search. You can hide, not certain about that one. You can hide the buttons, so I've got a delete add edit button, but you can show just one of those buttons or a subset of those buttons. Okay, I think that's probably long enough. I hope that helps. Cheers.